I was 22 when I got my dog. I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't give him up. I set up some cameras and I pretended to leave for work, and I saw my roommate kicking and punching my dog. It taught me that getting results is not the most important thing in the world. I think dogs are one of the biggest mirrors, and I think that they're also spiritual teachers. I believe the secret to living is giving and serving something bigger than yourself. And for a lot of people, I can just be your dog.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Brady Foulk, and we're talking about dog training. So this is kind of a unique guest to have on the show, where we're sharing how dog training can help you grow in self-confidence, provide emotional support, and help you kind of develop as a man. So I'm excited because I imagine most of our listeners have dogs, and Brady's here to give us a deeper dive into the psychology of those animals and the bond that we have with them. So Brady, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I want your audience to know, for those who have dogs, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about some dog stuff, training, and the games I play. And if you don't have a dog, we're also going to talk about the emotional side of it, the leadership side of it, and how it kind of all relates together, because that's one of the reasons why I got into it, actually. So thank you, everyone, for listening right now. And we'll be here for maybe 30, 40 minutes talking about this?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I like to kick the show off with your personal story. So you said a part of it was your emotional journey getting into dog training and working with animals. Can you share a little about that with our audience?
Most definitely. Yeah, I am the oldest of 6, and my family grew up with lots of animals. And the story that I heard from our family was, they're too much, we can't handle them, and we're going to find a new home for them. And so we saw a lot of dogs come and go from our point of view. And then the type of training that my parents did, and it was kind of like more old school training, it was a lot of intimidation, a lot of correcting behaviors, and it felt for the dogs like walking on eggshells. And for me personally, there was sometimes I felt like I was walking on eggshells of being seen and not heard, and just doing what they say but not what they do, and having these type of rules and these belief systems set up. So as I've gotten older, when I got my first dog, I was 22 when I got my dog, and I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't give him up. Like, I would do whatever it takes to find the trainers and to find the thing that's aligned with me, of who I am and what I wanted to train. And for me, I thought the opposite of intimidation was bribing. So I was like, well, I'm gonna buy the best food, the best treats, the best dog beds, the best toys, the best of everything. I was spending hundreds of dollars on this dog. And I'll tell you what, it didn't stop him from eating my carpet and the Wi-Fi cable and having accidents in the house. It didn't teach him how to communicate with me. It got to the point to where he would look at me and he goes, "You got the good treat or I'm not coming." And I was like, man, like, there's gotta be something better. And I remember my friends messaged me and they're like, "Brady, come hang out with us. We haven't seen you in months since you've got this new puppy." I was like, because he's changing my life. I don't know what to do with him. Like, I've lost control, and I thought all I had to do was buy the right stuff, but he doesn't care. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna leave him in my room. I'll come hang out with you guys for an hour. And like, I remember I gave him like 4 different bones, and I didn't put him in the crate because the neighbors were complaining that he would bark the whole time. So I was like, all right, you can just hang out in my room. I dog proofed it as much as I could. And I came back after that hour. It was like an hour and a half, and I opened the door and like this smell hit me, and I'm like, oh no, something's wrong. And then I opened my door, and like, sure enough, his butt's wiggling. He's so excited to see me. He's like, "Dad, look what I did." And I look around, and there's like 4 piles of poop on the ground. There's part of the carpet was torn up. I remember I got my dad this Father's Day present, and I put this leather duffel bag like in a box inside a box inside a box, like in the closet. And this dude ate through like all 4 boxes, and I was like, goodness, like, that nose is so good. Like, part of me was impressed, but part of me was like, why? Like, you're turning my life upside down. And that was my rock bottom. And I don't know if anyone listening right now has hit their rock bottom with their dog and they're like, I don't want to intimidate them. Bribing isn't working. It works to a point until, like, if you're not there, you're not there to do anything about it. So you're not actually learning anything. And that's when I knew I had to find a different way. That was the wall that I hit. And after I hit that wall, I remembered my promise. I was like, I am not giving this guy up. My friends were like, just find a new home for him. Like, come hang out with us. Like, come back to the bars. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm doing. Like, I'm figuring this out. So I went and I found. I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan, so he played a huge role in my self development from what I've learned, the 80-20 rule and his 4-hour work week and Tools of Titans and all these different books. And in one of the books and on his podcast, he interviewed a woman named Susan Garrett. And Susan Garrett, she changed my life because she showed a way that you could train dogs through games. And I was like, well, that resonates. I played football and soccer and baseball. And obviously, we've all had coaches that intimidated us and like weren't the best. But we've also had coaches that inspired us and like made us rise to the occasion. And I was like, I remember those coaches. Like, I'm going to play through games. And so I got her recallers program, which is teaching come when called, because that's like the safety trick to teach your dog. And then her crate games, because I needed him to have like a safe space inside the house where I knew I could leave him and he would be good and he wasn't like freaking out in there. And then I made a list of all the things I wanted to train him to do, like opening the fridge and bringing me a water bottle, or riding a skateboard, or being able to retrieve things and bring them back to me, and being good around my friends and all these different things. And sure enough, I was able to accomplish about 95% of them.
You taught him to ride a skateboard?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They're so capable of doing so many things.
Yeah.
I remember like Rob Dyrdek Fantasy Factory, they always had the bulldog that rode the skateboard, and that's where I got the idea from. I was like, my dog's gonna do that. And it wasn't right away, right? But it was one of those things where like what you write, you invite. And I wrote down this list, and I didn't even look at this list again. I found it a few years ago, and I was like, wow, I've done all of these things just by like programming my subconscious of where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started training games, and it wasn't all uphill from there. There was still rocky moments, and what happened was my roommate didn't align with how I trained my dog, and I didn't know this at the time, but one of my neighbors was like, hey, your dog's making some weird noises after you go to work. Like, I think something's not right. And like, I had known that he got better at crate training and like everything else. And I was like, what's going on? So I set up some cameras and I pretended to leave for work, and I saw my roommate kicking and punching my dog when he wasn't doing what he asked him to do. And it lit a fire inside of me. It taught me that getting results is not the most important thing in the world. It's like how you communicate to him. And I remember I came out of the room and like I grabbed him and I threw him to the ground and we started fighting. And I was like, well, this doesn't make me any better than him if I just do the same thing he did to me when I'm upset. And I ended up calling the police because I didn't know what else to do. And the police were like, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You should get a new roommate. And I was like, well, you guys are right. I should get a new roommate. And I ended up getting a new roommate and working through that. And that set me just on a path of like, who do I want to become? Because it's not about getting results. And like I said, we all can remember the leaders who intimidated us or who bribed us. And at the end of the day, we're most likely not still with them. We're not following them anymore. And then there's leaders who did inspire you, and you probably can remember their face and hear their voices and remember how they made you feel. And you probably still like look up to them or think about them, or like, what would I remember my 5th grade teacher, what would Miss Jones do? Or like some of my baseball coaches, like what would they do? And I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. And I was like, what's great about this problem? Like, how can I make this the way that I want it by accepting responsibility for it? And that is the transformation that I got, because I wanted a dog who could do all these things, right? And I've trained him to open up the fridge and bring me a water bottle and to ride a skateboard. And at the end of the day, it's not about those things, but it's about how you relate to your dog, how you communicate to him, and how you work through problems. And that's my journey of going from someone whose dogs you just kind of got rid of when you didn't know what to do, to someone who like you figured it out, but then you realize not everyone teaches the same way, and there's other conflicts, and you're like, wow, this isn't about getting things anymore. This is about like how does this make my dog feel? How does my dog remember me? And when I get furious, I know I need to get curious, because
Yeah. So
really
I'm
about how to
curious,
be remembered.
like what you learned about yourself, or if you had a mirror with the dog, so for instance, like our dog is, well, I think he's 18 months old right now. He's a Bernese Mountain Dog. And like, they're very like social and they're very needy, and he'll just like come up and just like stare at me. Right. And like, I don't know what he wants. Like maybe he wants to be pet. He doesn't really play that much, he just wants to like be attended to, and just like be close to us. And I realized how like overstimulating that was in the beginning. I didn't think I had that. I didn't think I had that in me, that like that would feel overwhelming, but like that like constant like need of like, look at me, attend to me, pay attention, what are you doing? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? Right. Like it just showed me a part of myself that I can now work on with him, but it showed me a part of myself that I didn't even know was there. I'm curious if you have a similar experience of like seeing your own psyche reflected in the dog.
Definitely. I think dogs are one of the biggest mirrors. And I think that they're also spiritual teachers, in the sense that the universe, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, my last dog was amazing. Like I didn't have to train him at all. They just got it. And this dog has been a pain. Like I can't figure out how to communicate to him. I was like, the universe gave you that one. That was a gift. You can say thank you for it. Now the universe is like, you need to grow in different ways. And so I look at these things like that. And yesterday, actually, I went and I took him to the park, and I do this thing where I melt clouds. And so I'll look at the clouds and I'll practice Ho'oponopono, which is this Hawaiian technique where I say, I love you, thank you, please forgive me, I'm sorry. And as I look at these clouds, they'll disintegrate and they'll dissolve. And I'm sitting there with my dogs, and I have Bumblebee who's 8, and Bumblebee can just chill and relax. And I have a new puppy. Her name is Curiosity, and I call it Curry for short. And she just turned 1. And we're working on this meditative skill of just chilling and relaxing. And sometimes when I'm looking at these clouds, my mind starts wondering, it's like, okay, who do I have to train today? What social media posts do I got to get done? Like, who do I need to check in on? And like, I have all these thoughts and I lose track of my thoughts. And Curiosity also has a little bit of that pattern of where she'll be like laying, and then she'll get up and she'll be like, hey, what you doing? Like, what are you up to? Or like, hey, you see that dog over there? Or like, what's going on over here? And I was like, wow, she is just reflecting my internal dialogue. And like yesterday I was struggling a little bit, just staying focused on the clouds. And then she was just reflecting that whole thing back at me. And it's a moment to like take a breath and to like meet them where they're at, and to like resettle back down, and to like find that place again. And then as we got settled back down, then I would start looking at the clouds, and something else would pop up, another thought. And as these things happen, same for our dogs, same for us, we just get better at recognizing it and then letting it go. So we were practicing like watching the dog go by, and then like coming back to being calm, because there's lots of dogs walking around us. But yeah, I totally believe that there's way more instances than just that. That was just a recent one that happened yesterday that I just thought of. And yeah, they are a reflection of our own psyche in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Did it force you to like flex yourself a little bit? Because you said that bribing didn't work, right? And like, of course, aggression, abuse doesn't work. But I imagine, of course, you're the expert. Like, you need some level of assertiveness. You need some level of boundaries. You need some level of communication. But you also need to be tender and gentle and loving. And you kind of have to expand as a person to be able to meet the dog where they're at. Was that part of your journey? Like having to kind of like act different ways? If you tend to be more of a gentle soul, was it tough for you to be more disciplinary?
Yeah, that's a good question, because growing up, being the oldest of 6, I was more assertive and intimidating in my leadership style. And one of my siblings was telling me, and I don't remember this at all, to pre-frame this. They're like, you remember that time where you melted all of our crayons because we weren't listening? And I was like, I did not do
Throw in the oven or something? Yeah.
I put them in a pot, they said, and just melted them.
blow
I
them
was
down.
like, oh my gosh. So that was a part of me that I had to like come to terms with, and be like, okay, there's more than one way of getting results from people, and positive is not permissive. That's one of the mindsets. People are like, oh, you're a positive trainer, you let them get away with everything. It's like, no, that's not how it works. There's still rules and routines. And one story that I like to tell with my family that my girlfriend actually helped me out with, because she's a project manager and architect, she's very like detail oriented. I'm more of a fire child. Like I've done improv and played a lot of sports, and like I like to talk and meet people. And so she came over and she likes playing games, and our family doesn't play many games because we'll end up getting in a fight or someone will start working with someone, and like it's just not good. And so she's like, let's play Monopoly. And I was like, you don't want to play Monopoly with us. She's like, no, let's do it. I'm like, all right, you asked for it. Like, I'll give you an experience. And so we pull out the Monopoly board, and all my siblings just take all the money that they could possibly grab in that moment. And she's like, what are you guys doing? They're like, well, it's just first come, first serve. It's whatever you get is whatever you get to play with. And she's like, that's not the rules. Like, give me all this money. And so she's like, I'm the banker now. And so she took back all the money from people, and she gave the money, like the rights amount to people. And she explained how you only get money when you cross go, and there's no like bribing and working together. If you get mad at someone, you can't just give them all your properties. There's an auction format, and there's rules to this. And we were actually able to finish the game, and only one person ended up crying, which is good. Normally, everyone's fighting and wrestling by the end of it. But I was like, I want to give my property. Say that again?
Instead of move the needle, that was a win. You only got one person each year. Yeah.
Like, I want to give all my property to him. It's like, no, you can't do that. Like, you got to give it to the person who bid the most. And I look at it the same way as dog training. There's rules, and I believe a lot in choices. And so you have a choice to play the games or to not play the games. You have a choice to steal or not to steal. And my goal is to make the better choice just way more attractive for you. And I do that by understanding their model of the world and what they like. And some dogs like to play with toys, some dogs like food, some dogs like affection. And all three of them are great rewards. So it's not like we're just like bribing them with treats all the time. It's we're paying attention to what their love language is. And then we're showing them like, hey, do you want to bark at this dog right now, or do you want to play a game of tug with me? And I give you the choice. And if you make the wrong choice, then what's going to happen is I'm probably going to move away from that distraction. And so if we're 20 feet away from the dog, we're going to move 30 feet away. And I'm like, what does your brain think now? Do you have like a little bit more of a gap? Because my goal is always to take the stimulus and their response and to widen that gap and to give them just a little bit more thoughtfulness each time. And to give them the choice. It's like, I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to intimidate you to play with this toy or to chew on the bully stick. But I'm going to make it easier for you to make the choice by moving it away from the distraction. And then as we get success, then we can move closer. And I look at it through like school, like kindergarten through PhD. And most of the time people take their dogs and they throw them in like a high school level problem. And I start giving them some pre-calc or calculus. And they really are learning multiplication or long division right now. And so it's just being mindful of where your dog's at and meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, and since you're talking, I'm like, those are all great advice just for humans too. You know, I mean, as far as leadership development goes and helping to work with people, I think it's great that you can apply that.
Yeah.
So let's just dig into it. Like, how would you describe your dog training philosophy? I know you're kind of touching on bits and pieces, but what's the pitch? How do you view the relationship between man and dog?
Yeah, so I empower puppies, dogs, and their owners to have more success at home and around town while having fun, while playing games. We focus on 3 pillars. It's coming when called because that's a safety thing. We focus on place and crate training, and there's ways, like I'm the oldest of 6, like I mentioned. When I got overwhelmed with my family, which happened quite a bit, it was like my family is really loud, very chaotic. I would go to my room. And in my room, I would play with my Legos. I would like play with my toys, video games, whatever it was. And that was like my safe place where I could go breathe and catch my breath. And I wanted dogs to have their own safe place too. And then walking on leash. That's another big one because we want our dogs to not just be good at home, because a lot of times people are like, my dog's great at home, but out and about, they like lose it all. Well, it's because we got to generalize the behaviors and take them other places. It's like, I went to Disneyland as a kid. I've been to Disneyland hundreds of times. I've been blessed to go to Disneyland hundreds of times. And when I walk into Disneyland, it's not that overwhelming for me because I've done it a lot. I've practiced the training. I've followed my parents around. Like I've got fast passes and I've had to show back up at places. Sometimes I go with people who it's their second time, third time going, and they walk in and they're just like in a trance immediately. And like you say something and they're like, sorry, I was distracted by Mickey over here, or there's Cinderella over here. Or like you see that ride and I was like, oh, I know that ride. I've been on that ride hundreds of times. Like I love Big Thunder Mountain, right? So it is, you have to generalize behaviors. You got to take them out and around town. And we do the same training at different locations. So we show them like these games don't just apply at home. They actually apply in the front yard. They apply on walks. They apply at Home Depot. They apply at dog parks. They apply everywhere. And that's my thing. And I used to train either like in-person lessons at your house or like a board and train. And now I kind of do it all. There's in-person lessons, there's a board and training aspect of it because I do this stuff all day, every day. And there's the secrets in the sequence, really. Johnny bit the dog and the dog bit Johnny. Same exact words, radically different results. And so it's being mindful of like the order that you're doing things in. And then there's also group lessons where we meet up as a group and we work through different challenges.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible. I'm curious, like, how do you apply this to leadership development? How does it switch over into like working with people?
Yeah, the people, a lot of it is training the people and it's showing them how important the sequence is and pointing out to them. One of the biggest things I point out is pattern recognition. And if you can recognize your own patterns and again, find this stimulus gap in response, and that's all a pattern is there's something that triggers you and then there's a response and there's a consequence. Either you're rewarded for the behavior or you're not. Sometimes people take their kids into a grocery store and their kid's screaming for something and eventually they give them that thing to stop them from screaming and the kid stops. But what did they just reward is like the kid screams until they get what they want. And dogs are the same way. Like dogs will scream at you and sometimes they learn they have to be bad in order to be good. And they'll come in, they'll jump on you and then you'll be like, off, sit. And then they're off and they sit and then you tell them good job. You pat them on the head, you give them a treat. And from the outside, you're like, oh, my dog listens to me. But what you're not recognizing is the pattern that they have to jump on you to get your attention.
Right. It's the whole sequence. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
It's the whole sequence.
Yeah.
And so like showing them like pattern recognition is the first step. If you can just start recognizing patterns, your life right there will be different. And then it's pattern creation. Like how do we take these things and how do we create patterns that actually are helpful to us? Like how do we create a dog when they hear a knock at the door, they can go to their crate? Or when we come home, they sit the first time without us saying anything. Like how do we do this? And then the final one is pattern utilization. And this one's a little tricky one, but curiosity loves sticks. And sticks aren't the best things for your dogs to play with. I understand that. But yet she loves sticks. So like, all right, how do I utilize this? Well, I'm just going to teach her how to retrieve a stick and bring him to me. And then I'm going to throw him away. And then so now she just brings me the sticks and I throw them away. And she finds another stick and she brings it to me and I throw it away. And now I utilize the pattern. Or dogs who like to dig, you can teach them how to scratch a nail board and trim their nails. And so like you can utilize patterns too. So as a leader, it's like recognizing these patterns and not getting thrown off by them and being like, oh, I'm going to blame you for this thing, because blaming someone doesn't get anything. You can blame others, you can blame things, or you can blame yourself. All three things of those don't work, right? As a leader, you have to anticipate and you got to recognize the patterns and you got to create new patterns. So it's a lot of teaching them how to recognize patterns and how to be elegant in using pain and pleasure to get what they want, like moving away from what they want or withholding something they want or whatever it may be.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. How much latitude is there with certain breeds? Because when you think of that, like you talk about like the diggers, right, or the guard dogs or the patrollers, right, the shepherds and stuff, like there's some stuff where they're just bred to do that. So I imagine it's about more, like you said, working with them and finding ways that they can express that part of themselves and not just be like neurotic and crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there latitude, like, or are some dogs just going to have certain things based on their breed?
Yeah, each one's have their own little things, right? Like huskies like to speak a lot. They're very vocal. Uh, I have an Australian Shepherd. Bumblebee's an Australian Shepherd, and Curiosity is a mini Aussie Doodle. And so part of that is they like to nip and to hurt things. You got some dogs who just like to chill and relax, like a Bichon or Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. And they just are bred to like sleep on your feet and just to chill. So taking all these into account, I'll allow, what do I say? I recognize like they have their own little things, and yet I still want you to play these games and to do these things. And my goal is to show you like it's much more fun to play these games than not play these games. So like for the Australian Shepherds, it's working on what can you bite, what can you chase, and what can't you chase. And when you start biting my ankles, the game stops. Like we don't play anymore when you bite my ankles. And then as soon as you stop, or when you stop biting my ankles, the game starts again. And so like I'm associating pain to biting my ankles because the fun stops. And then as soon as you stop, the pleasure begins, and I start running around with this toy again. And so you can grab the toy. That's cool. You can't bite me. Or with huskies, I teach them how to speak. And so I put speak on command. And so I was like, when I say speak, you can speak and you can be loud. I get it. You're vocal dogs. And sometimes you can sing with your dogs and you can play on a certain song. Like this song means we're going to get super excited. And we can be as loud as we want. You can be as loud as you want with this song. But when this song is off, we're not speaking. Right. And then you're just mindful of how often you turn on this song. And it's the same for kids in the car. You can teach them a moment of like, this is when we get hyped. This is when we party. And then these are the moments where we're meditative, we're chill. So turning on and off. And like same for dogs who are like a little bit more chill. It's like there's a time and place to chill. Like I play dog meditation with the dogs, and I teach deep pressure therapy. So they come and lay on your lap and they provide support and comfort to you. And they're great at this game. And then there's a part of the game where you got to turn back on and you got to like go around this cone, and we got to practice going around this cone, and you go back and forth, back and forth. And so we teach them how to turn it on and then turn it off. There's a moment when I say, ready, steady, go, like we're doing this thing, like I need you to turn on. And then when I say, okay, I just use their name a lot of the times. I'll say Leo or whatever their name is. Then it's time to like chill and to relax. And I'll typically use a little hand signal. So I'll go like this, like all done. And if like we're done playing now, and dogs who are really high drive, like my Australian Shepherd, that game was really hard. He's like, nah, I want to keep playing. It's like, no, now it's time to like deep pressure therapy and to meditate. And I also practice Ho'oponopono with them, where I'll be saying like, I love you, thank you, please forgive me, I'm sorry. And like taking, because I'm a very high drive person too. I don't know if you can tell by how fast I'm talking right now. This stuff gets me amped. I'm excited. And sometimes I need to remember to like take a breath, relax, and understand that I give this same emotion to my dog. So I'm also practicing breathing and using my breath to slow them down. So it's acknowledging where they're at and what they like to do, and then also showing them that there's options. You don't have to be this person all the time. There's some flexibility.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, you could talk a little bit about like dog psychology, you know, if there's a hierarchy mentality or the pack mentality, or how they do that. You know, I've seen, my dog is nice because we have done dog training, it's been effective, but some people, right, like their dogs run their house. You can say that like that dog's the alpha, right? It's just like, it is setting the vibe all the time. Just like the person is in control of like, is it chill time? Is it hype time? It's just always whatever the dog wants to do. So how do you help people like change that hierarchy, or make it so that like their emotional vibe is a thing that is, you know, primary in the house?
Yeah, that's a good question. I understand that there's a hierarchy to many things in life. And I also agree with being an inspiring leader. Like I don't have to be like an alpha leader where I'm ruling like big, like alpha macho man. And I do jujitsu. I can use my physical force in many different ways if I wanted to. And yet it's a choice to be more elegant with how I inspire people. And at the end of the day, I also train potbelly pigs and turkeys, and I have guinea pigs, and I've worked with cows. And you can't like alpha pack these guys. You can't intimidate them to do what you want. You got to be elegant with how you influence them. And part of just being elegant is being very clear in your communication. And so one thing is I have a bedtime cookie at the end of the night, and Bumblebee loves his bedtime cookie. And in order to get your bedtime cookie, you go to your bed. And so if he's hungry, sometimes he just goes and lays down in his bed and he tells me like, dude, I want my bedtime cookie.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Like, I'm ready. And a lot of times people have rules set up to where their dog and how their dog thinks they need to get something is just incompatible with their lifestyle. And it's showing them how their dog communicates with them, like going potty. It's one of the first tests for people. You need to have a way for your dog to tell you they gotta go. It's very helpful. And when I go into a house and I see that there's accidents, and even worse, there's accidents that are being hidden from their owner, it tells me that when they find the accident, they go and they're not very nice about it. So their dog goes, oh, okay, I got it. I just don't pee in front of you. If I pee somewhere else, I'm good. It's like, no, what needs to happen is you need to put potty bells or like a little button that they can press, like a talking button, so they can be like, hey, I gotta go. And when you start forming this communication with them, there's a hierarchy because they know that you guys need to work together in order to get what you want. And yet it doesn't have to be me intimidating you or always micromanaging your behavior. There's moments where a dog does something wrong and like positive isn't permissive. So if you go and jump and put your paws on the counter, I'm going to go walk over there and take your paws off the counter. If you go and immediately jump back up on the counter, I'm going to put your paws on the counter. If you do a third time and put your paws on the counter, I'm going to help you off the counter and I'm going to put you in your crate for 30 seconds, for a minute. And that's because as a kid, I had to stand in the corner for like an hour or two. If you told me don't press the red button, like Mark, if I tell you don't think about a banana right now,
we're doing it. We're thinking about
you're doing it.
Yeah.
And most people are probably thinking like, nah, I'll press that button. Mm-hmm. And so it's getting out of that stop mindset and be like, okay, I understand you want something. That's what you're telling me is that you're hungry. Let's find a way that you can communicate like, hey, I'm hungry. I go to my bed and I can give you a treat for going to your bed. You don't got to steal things in life. You just have to communicate that you're hungry because we're abundant. We're in a time where there's an abundance of everything. And you just have to have a way for them to communicate these things. Does that help?
It does help. Yeah. I mean, that's very clear, right? It's like, it sounds like it's much more relational, right? It's not so much about like command and control. It's like trying to speak their language and get on their level and making sure that like they understand you and that they're able to speak human too, right? Like we got to speak dog and they got to speak a little bit of human.
Yeah, there's some cool dogs like Stella and Bunny that have all like hundreds of talking buttons.
I've seen that like on TikTok and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they legit form sentences like "Mom, tummy hurts," and some of the syntax is because the humans tell them to press the buttons in a certain order. That's a question that I get, but also just them recognizing that like, oh, my stomach hurts, and then they go and throw up, or like I'm hungry, or I want to go for a walk, or whatever it may be. They're brilliant in how they communicate. Absolutely brilliant. You just got to give them a way to communicate to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, you talk a lot about mindfulness, right? Like being really mindful of micro expressions or different changes in their behavior. It sounds like it can be a real pulse to the present moment in order to understand like what the nuance of your dog is trying to say to you, because sometimes it's not always obvious, right? I know animals often like mask sickness or mask pain because they don't want to appear weak, right? They don't want to like be prey. So you have to see those like more subtle changes in them.
Yeah, or we get good at like just ignoring things and tell them to like suck it up and keep going. Like that was my childhood.
Toxic masculinity, like don't be a pussy dog. Like
yeah. I remember when I would get hurt in sports, my dad would just like clap 2 times, and I was like, "All right, you're done being on the ground. It's time to get up." I would just like, "Time to get back up."
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, like, I mean, as you're talking, right, as a psychologist, so much of what you're saying is like applicable to children, it's applicable to leaders and teams. I wonder, like, have you thought of expanding beyond dogs and maybe helping parents or helping managers or bosses? Because I think a lot of this stuff is like really good, it's really golden.
Yeah, no, I love speaking about leadership and how this is all applicable because one of the reasons I got into dog training is because growing up, like I mentioned, I had to walk on eggshells, and it was one of those things where if you can teach someone how to communicate with an animal without words, then you should be able to communicate with your kids even more effectively. And I was at a family party, and it was my second cousin. He turned 4, and I was playing Pokemon with him. Like, I'm a big Pokemon nerd, and we were playing Pokemon cards, and he had the pattern of, he'd be like, how much is this attack? How much is this attack? And like, he would ask me, and this kid knows his numbers. He knows how to read. And so like, I recognized that pattern, and then I would ask him before he asked me. I was like, how much is that attack? How much is that attack? And so like, I had him start reading the numbers. He's like, 1, 2, 0. I'm like, 120. Wow, that's awesome. And like, we'd work through it. And like, my uncle was like, he asked my girlfriend, he's like, is Brady like this all the time? And she's like, oh yeah. Like,
they can't turn it off. Yeah.
You can't. Like, once you recognize patterns, you recognize patterns.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I was like, it's so cool to be able to talk to them. Like, the dogs, I have to be more creative with how I communicate things to them. But the kids, they're like, I can just like right away. And you have to be careful, because my uncle came over and he just started just telling them the answer. He's like, it's 120, it's 60, it's 80. And I was like, stop it. He's not learning anything. You're teaching him that all he has to do is act like he doesn't know. And then someone's going to come give him the answer. In short term, yeah, you make the game go way faster, and it's way more fun for us because our brains are going quick. But long term, you're creating a bad habit for them, and you're giving them the answers. And dog training is the same way. We don't want to just give them the answers. We want them to think through problems. It's like driving with GPS or driving without GPS. If you drive with GPS, you're never going to be able to get back to that place without GPS. But if you take an hour and you get lost and you pass the same 7-Eleven 4 times, and then you pass the street sign, you're like, next time I know I make a left, not a right at the 7-Elevens. And so it's like giving them this moment to think. So yeah, I've thought about diving into more working with kids or teenagers or parents for leadership, because it is a different dynamic and you can move a little bit faster in some ways, but the concepts are all the same. We still want you to be more thoughtful. We want you to be more mindful about these things, and then recognizing the patterns that you're portraying.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea, right? Like, me and my wife are trying for kids now, and like, I'd love to have someone like you that can help us like raise them and speak their language and stay positive and stay loving. Like, I think that's really valuable. And we're doing this thing that like a lot of American couples do, where we start with a dog, right?
Yeah.
And then like we get engaged, and then we got married, and like we're doing like the trial run. And I think it's been really helpful to like, both work on our teamwork and to interact with something that is at that kind of like toddler level, as a way to just like be used to being like, okay, this thing is not the same as me, right? Like, it's not an adult like you're saying, but I do have to figure out how to interact with it. I have to figure out how to coexist and how to speak its language.
Yeah. And it's like, for kids, you teach them sign language at first too. And one question I get asked, because I was on like a podcast with this gentleman and his 2 kids, and like, what do you do for like kids who want a dog, but they're not responsible enough for a dog? And like, what do you do? And I was like, trust me, I know, because my parents tried to put all that responsibility on us, and they just expected that we'd figure it out. And then we didn't, sure enough. And then they got rid of the dog. And sometimes you just start with something smaller. Like my girlfriend, she's never had any animals before. So I'm the primary caretaker with the dogs. Like, I meet all their needs. I do all the training. I take them for physical walks. Like, I do all the things. There's nothing you really got to think about for them. But she's never had pets before, so we got guinea pigs. Guinea pigs are way easier to take care of.
Yeah, they don't do shit, right? I mean, what do they do?
They poop 150 times a day. You gotta
clean out the cage every once in a while, right? And feed them the pellets. Yeah.
Exactly. But you can also train guinea pigs. So we've trained them, like when we knock on the side of their crate, they'll run up to the top, because like we'll feed them cilantro or carrots up there. So like we've formed communication. So like, how to come when called now, right? Or we can make this sound like, and when we make this sound, we'll let them out of their crate, and they'll come to us when we make that sound. And like, we've had to build trust with them, and we've had to like make sure that they get fed and their crate gets cleaned on time. And yeah, these things are there, but you had to learn like how to communicate with them, and it teaches you how to be responsible. So starting there is always amazing. And I think everyone should start with an animal before they have a kid. Obviously, you'll figure it out if you have a kid. Like you got no other choice. You got to figure it out. But you could be even more elegant in how you impact and influence them.
Yeah. So make the pitch to somebody who, wants to build a responsibility, or somebody who is maybe struggling with depression or anxiety. Like, how can an animal help somebody who's going through a tough time? How can that be
Oh,
beneficial?
so many ways. I'm partnering up with Dave Albin. I don't know if you've had Dave Albin on your show,
I've
the
not.
Firewalker.
No, that's cool.
He's was Tony's head fire team captain for 20 years until he built all the firewalks. And I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I'm going to Cologne, Germany in September to go build a firewalk out there. I volunteer a bunch. And he now is doing firewalks for veterans, first responders, single moms, and children. And I'm partnering up with him to provide emotional support animals for the veterans because they give you a reason to wake up. They give you like something to take care of. You have to get out of your own head. Suffering is thinking about yourself the whole time and thinking about what's wrong about me. As soon as you're able to start getting your mind on like what does this animal need, what does other people need, you get out of suffering because you're thinking bigger than yourself. And being able to take rescue dogs, my goal is to partner with different animal rescues and take these animal who are great dogs. They just don't have a family right now, and to pair them with a veteran and give them both a purpose for serving something bigger than themselves, and the animal working to do deep pressure therapy or learning dog meditation so the veteran can sit and to like relax with them, and also being able to go on walks with them and communicate going to the bathroom. It just gives you a purpose. And sometimes people make purpose such this big thing, like what is my purpose for life? And it doesn't have, I have multiple purposes. Like I have a purpose for my dog training business. I have a purpose for my physical body. I have a purpose for my meditation practice. I have a purpose for my money and my referrals. I got multiple purposes in life. And it's this idea of one of your purposes is to make sure this dog thrives and is getting their needs met. And all dogs have needs. There's a need for safety, for certainty. There's a need for variety. There's a need for love and connection. There's a need to feel important, like you're part of a family, the need to feel needed. There's a need for growth. And the last one is the need for contribution, to contribute to something bigger than yourself. And for a dog, most people are like, how does a dog contribute? It's like the dog can come over and provide you just by licking your hand. I train a lot of dogs just to lick people's hands when they start feeling anxiety. And dogs can smell anxiety. They can smell these things because your body emits a certain chemical. It releases cortisol, and the dogs smell those things. Dogs' noses are amazing. And so the dog can be like, oh, when I smell this, I serve and support my human, right? And it's just by laying on their lap or by licking their hand or something that the human enjoys, right? It could be literally anything. So I am a big advocate for partnering people up with animals and making sure that the animals is serving them and that they're serving the animal, and it's a symbiotic relationship.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, that's an incredible mission. I work with a handful of veterans and first responders, and like 9 times out of 10, they talk about their dogs and their pets as like the thing that's like their anchor to this world.
Yeah.
I think it's really meaningful for them to have something that loves them unconditionally. And like you said, that bond and that connection, and a mission. A lot of these guys like need missions, and going on dog adventures and having the best trained dog lets their brain relax too, and yeah, an animal that can be there when they're depressed, when they're lying down and they can't get up, like having the dog sit next to them and just like love on them when they're in those dark places, I think is really, really powerful. So I'm all in favor of that mission. And I think like you're going to do great out there on helping to connect these dogs and these veterans together, because it's really needed,
Yeah, I'm very excited. Like you can't sleep in when you got to take your dog for walks. You gotta go to the bathroom. You feel
right.
feel kind of bad.
It also, like I said, forces healthy habits, right? Like you want to start eating better. You want to give your dog the best food. You want to go on walks. Like you want more light in the house, right? Like it just like you want to make your house nicer so the dog has a better house. I think it's very inspiring for a lot of people. It's so easy for people to love animals more than they love themselves, but it does kind of come back around.
Yeah, and it is a very humbling and just a grateful experience just to love something other than yourself and to like realize like I believe the secret to living is giving and serving something bigger than yourself. And for a lot of people, I can just be your dog.
Yeah, I really like that message. As we're wrapping up here, like the purpose doesn't have to be lofty. It can just be your dog, right? Or it can just be your kid, or it can just be, keeping your house clean. Like I agree with you completely. I think a lot of guys get tripped up trying to have this like overarching superhero story, right? I'm going to change, or I'm going to cure cancer, whatever it is. But like, I think what's effective is just what you said, is like small things that are very tangible. I think people get a lot of meaning out of that. If you can get your own ego out of the way, you can actually commit to what's in front of you. So Brady, thanks again for being on the show. Where can people find more about you online if they want to follow you and they want to learn some tips and tricks for training?
Yeah, the best place is my Instagram. So, or my website. So my website is newdirectiondogtraining.com. And my Instagram is N like new, D like direction, dog training. So ND dog training. And it's the same on TikTok or YouTube, and you can go find some tips and tricks on there. I'm being better at posting. That's part of me. Like, I have my different categories of life broken up. And so like one of them is my tech wizard. And my tech wizard sometimes feels a little overwhelmed with the social media posts and all these things. I love training dogs. I'm like real passionate about that. Posting on social media, I'm growing, but I know it's very important to share these messages with people. So I'm getting better at scheduling posts, and I've been revamping that. I'm teaching my puppy how to ride a skateboard. So there's Curiosity how to ride a skateboard now, so you can come check out her journey on there. And I post lots of fun videos of different animals.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have that stuff in the show notes for y'all to click around and see and, follow, subscribe. And I'm curious, Brady, like, do you offer virtual sessions, or are you mainly based in Austin? Like, if you want to work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I do offer Zoom lessons. Luckily, COVID helped me refine my Zoom lessons. And I used to work at Apple. So there's part of it of like directing people of how to do things themselves. You got to be very clear with your words. And then I've been making online courses. So that's something that I've been diving into more, like filming more content, making more structure around what I do, and allowing people to do it online. So that's part of what I do as well. So come get an online course. My first one, I just released it. It's How to Manifest Your Dream Dog. $6. I teach 3 different games. I tell some stories about like the hardest dog that I've ever trained. Some stories you heard here, some stories you didn't hear here. So check out that course, $6, see kind of what I'm about, and that's on my website as well.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great intro. So yeah, y'all listen, like, check out his stuff, check out his courses. I think he's a great guy. And thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.